Can you guys hear me okay? Cool. Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you to the HAAB for hosting. It's an honor to be invited to come and talk. I've been in the HAAB ecosystem for almost a year now, and it's been a huge part of my journey, of my personal and my professional growth. So grateful to be able to share this with the team that I get to see every day. And I was trying to decide what I wanted to talk about, and I gave the title Conscious Engineering mostly just to lure you guys in because I didn't know what I wanted to talk about yet. But really what I want to talk about today is the idea of how we can use technology to be in service, but also what it means to impact the world and how we can maximize impact. And also, what's the relationship between our personal journeys and the projects that we work on? Because we oftentimes talk about them as being separate, but I really think that they are the same. And so for me, this journey starts, and I'll go through kind of these trials and tribulations of my projects that takes me to this moment here with you all right now. But my journey starts in the forests of Canada, where I'm from. And I used to come home from school every day and collect sap from the maple trees and make maple syrup. And we'd make forts out of fallen trees. Me and my brothers would just whack each other with sticks. And this was such an important part of my journey because it really sparked my curiosity and my creativity, and that I would always build. And it showed me that my physical medium was to build with objects. So I went off to university and started studying mechanical engineering. And after my first year, I got my first real job, which was working at Bombardier Aerospace designing commercial airplanes. And I thought, I'm 18 years old, this is amazing, I'm at the top of my game. And then I showed up to my first day of work, and I spent the next 4 months typing in Excel spreadsheets. And that was terrible. And so it brought me back to school in the fall with a very fundamental question, one of the most fundamental questions to humanity. What should I do with my life? And a mentor of mine said, are you familiar with the term ikigai? And I said, no. He said it's a Japanese proverb, and it's to bring your life into balance. And there are 4 main components. If you can balance these 4 components, you will find peace. The 4 components are: do something that you love so that you can be in your flow every day. Do something that you are good at so you can push the bounds of what the world has ever seen before. Do something that people need so you have an opportunity to be of service, which I think is the greatest gift we can receive as well. And finally, do something that pays, because no matter how many ways you want to slice it, money is real. And I also believe that whatever you choose to create is going to be a reflection of your current state of self. So you have to do the work for yourself first. So this kind of takes through the last few years of my life of these projects that I was working on. And it started with this dream. I was going to design shoes, and I wanted to work for Nike. And so I joined this design team at my school, which was designing this leg brace, of which I had no interest, but I spent every day just working on the foot, putting on shoelaces and Velcros and just playing. And then I messaged the head of R&D for footwear at Nike at the head office in Portland, Oregon. And we talked for a while. He told me, if you really want to do this, if you want to do this at a high level, go study biomechanics. Go learn how the body really works so that you can create things that mimic and improve its performance. And so I started working in a biomechanics research lab when I was 19. And this video is the most accurately a foot has ever been tracked in the history of the world. We did a really unique study where this guy had injected metal beads into every bone in his foot, and then we took him through a biplanar videography machine, which basically means 3D video x-rays. And we worked back all this math to get this, which shows how all of the bones move within 0.2 millimeters translation within 1 degree of rotation. And so this for me on my journey was starting just to figure out the first part of the ikigai. What do I love? What do I enjoy? And I was really really starting to love this. The next part was about being in service, where I started getting connected to people in my community. So this is Brett. He has cerebral palsy and he's in a wheelchair. And he came to me and said, I have a huge problem. There's the grab bars that I need to use to transfer from my wheelchair to the toilet in the bathroom. It's just a flat bar. There's so many people with different levels of different disability, different shapes and sizes. So how can they expect that this is going to work for everyone? And so I started working on building this design with him of this adjustable one that has curvature that can go up and down with this simple mechanism. And he ended up taking this and starting a company with it and starting to sell it. That same year, I got brought out to Dhaka, Bangladesh for one of the craziest adventures of my whole life. Having never really left the woods of Canada, that was a big change for me. And it was with this pharmaceutical company. They wanted to start a new line of medical devices. So I worked on the design, the prototyping, the manufacturing of this leg brace, this knee, ankle, foot orthosis. And ultimately, these were fun projects, and I was starting to find something I liked. I was starting to find something I was good at. I was starting to work on being of service, but both of these never really made it that far in the world. They never really got into that many people's hands. And that's because there was no good business plan. There was really no way of executing on how to give it to people. So the next year when I was 21, I started working on more low-cost medical device projects. This was a contract I had with Doctors Without Borders. They had this idea that if you could figure out how to 3D print different medical devices, you could just drop a 3D printer with filaments in different emergency medicine situations with a catalog of medical devices that we designed. That way they could print whatever they needed when they needed it and be able to move with less supplies but still have access. And so I did like 150 iterations of 3D printing this, and it goes on an umbilical cord, so when it's cut, there's no infection, there's no loss of blood for the baby, and it costs about $1 to produce, and you can print it in 20 minutes. And then I started working on this, which was like very much just a student project of how do you build this kind of walking device at a really low cost for kids with cerebral palsy, so that they could sit on it and pedal their legs, that they could crawl with it a little bit, and as they grew older, they could stand up and walk with it, and how could you make it convertible for these different stages of life? And we just, kind of played with putting PVC together and cables, and you can make this for $50. This was a reflective heat blanket we made for a hospital in Zimbabwe because they were having a lot of problems with hypothermia for their newborn babies. And so we came up with this concept. You could produce this for a few dollars. But all of these were really just ideas. We were sitting in a room in Canada trying to come up with ways to solve other people's problems. And at the end of the day, I had to be really honest with myself and realize that it wasn't actually enacting change. It wasn't really impacting anyone. It was more just us sitting here with these ideas. And I was stuck. How do we get these things to people? And at the same time, I was broke because I was making no money. And so I took a job producing medical devices, and we made this, which was an entertainment unit to go into MRI machines. But at the same time, I had no interest in making these magnetic Netflix experiences for people. And so I was stuck trying to find a balance. Then I went off to grad school. I started doing my master's in biomedical engineering in the US, and I really focused on building orthotics and prosthetics. And I felt that I was starting to find my line with this. It was really resonating with me. I worked with this company. We were residents in the Autodesk Innovation Center. We were building prosthetic hands. This was my master's thesis, which was working on building this ankle brace where you could just add a few mechanical elements on the back and it would completely change the stiffness of the device at different stages during walking. So it would be more stiff as your leg goes forward and less stiff as you push off with your toes. And just that simple change completely changed the energetics of how someone walks, and they can walk more efficiently, and people with disabilities are able to walk a lot more easily. And then this was a prosthetic leg I made for a patient in Rhode Island, and this was 3D printed. And he's been wearing this for 2 years and he loves it. So now I was starting to get to a point where I love what I'm doing, I'm getting good at this, it's of service. Now we're starting to make sales. It's starting to get into people's hands, one here, one there. And I feel I'm starting to find my line, find my ikigai. And then something really important happened. Then I had a problem of my own. See, I woke up every day for about 3 months and my jaw was killing me. And I didn't know why. And I started to do some research. I was grinding my teeth at night and I realized that 2 of my teeth had shifted inwards. They rotated. And if your top and bottom teeth impact while you're sleeping, there's this autonomic response that creates this grinding. So I was waking up every day and my jaw was killing me. And so I figured, well, if I can just get these 2 teeth rotated back out a little bit, then it would solve the problem. So I went to a dentist and asked, can I get Invisalign? Can I get braces? What does that look like? And they said, well, the best we can do is we'll get you Invisalign. It'll take 8 months and it'll cost $3,000. And I was like, man, just to move 2 teeth, this is crazy, you know? And I was already pretty broke from student loans. I was already skipping meals, just trying to get by. I didn't have the money. And so I thought, you know what? I think I can do this myself. So I went on Amazon and I ordered dental trays and alginate to take impressions and then stone cast material to make this stone model. Then I went down to the design school down the hill and I 3D scanned them. I put them in my computer and I started digitally correcting these 2 teeth and I rotated them incrementally in 4 stages. Then I 3D printed them. I called a dental supplier and told them I was a small clinic in Rhode Island and I ordered these clear dental sheets. Then I built a little vacuum forming machine, this box with holes at the top and a shop vacuum plugs into the side. I laser cut a fixture, then you clamp the plastic sheets in. I take a heat gun, turn on the vacuum, form it around the 3D print, and then I cut the trim lines and I made my own Invisalign. The whole process took me 2.5 weeks to build the process, cost me $150 total, and after 4 months, my teeth were straight. And this was really interesting because they talk about in Entrepreneurship 101, you know, solve a problem that you want to solve for yourself. And I was already thinking like, man, I'm going to be undercutting dentists right now. This is amazing. You know, the money's going to come. And, but why I was so interested was because I realized that this technology was really powerful. That if I could do this by myself in a couple weeks, I didn't even have a YouTube video to teach myself, you know, it was just this intuitive process. And then my friends started coming to me asking me like, yo, can you straighten up? I'm like, okay, we gotta draw the line somewhere, you know, I'm not too sure. But I sat on this idea for a long time. I kept it in my back pocket because I think there's something here. At the age of 23, it was about startups. I was now living on the west coast of Canada. I finished my master's thesis. I founded an incubator program with a friend of mine. We had 8 startups come through our programming for the summer. We had a bunch of mentors come, some millionaires, some billionaires, giving their advice to our companies. 4-month program ended with a pitch competition. It was really amazing and I learned so much. And then I started my own company, a company called Stable. It does physiotherapy using biomechanics tracking from cameras on phones. Me and a co-founder did this. And then at the same time, I was working at another startup full time. And this is what we were building. It's called Human in Motion Robotics. This is Chloe. She's in a wheelchair, can't wiggle a toe. And she gets inside this exoskeleton, which is just these legs. That's actually just a safety in case she falls, but she doesn't. And she can go through a whole obstacle course. She can walk, she can go up and down stairs, up and down ramps, squat, turn in place, sidestep. She was trying to get us to put her in a basketball game, and we almost did it, but we figured best not in the end. And my role in all of this was really working through the human biomechanics, how to interface a robot with the human body, how to make sure that you're not going to cause any damage, and just to really think about the person that goes inside of it. But while this was one of the most amazing pieces of technology I'd ever worked on, and for example, here she is in her wheelchair and now she can get up and hug her husband, which is a really beautiful story. But after working on this project for a little over a year, again, I looked myself in the mirror and thought, is this really it? is this really going to have impact? And if impact is the depth of the impact per person times the number of people affected, and that's your total impact, then for me the answer was no, because I looked around at the team and realized that we were 12 engineers, and again, we didn't have a business plan, and I did it again. And I wanted something different. I wanted to do something that I felt like would really be for the masses, because to me, that was my definition of service. And so I quit everything. I hit my quarter life crisis. I was 24. I left my startup. I left my other startup. I left the side project, and I left the incubator, and I started living in my car. And I just went to the beach, and I was surfing. I was living in the mountains. I spent 4 months living in a tent planting trees. And we would get helied into the block some days and just drop us with a bunch of trees. I planted a little over 100,000 trees with a shovel this big. And I busted my elbow, I busted my back. It was one of the best experiences of my whole life. I didn't use a phone or a laptop for 4 months, and that was really just me doing the work for myself, growing, trying to understand what I needed, who I wanted to be in this world. And then I went out to the West Coast and I joined these protests. There were a bunch of police and loggers in collusion working together trying to cut down these ancient forests. We're talking trees 1 to 3,000 years old. And so hundreds of us went up and built camps and started living in the woods trying to stop the police and the loggers from coming through. And there was one main access road. So for us, it was if we could stop them from getting through the road, we could stop them from cutting. And so we would stay up all night building elaborate, ridiculous structures from fallen trees, digging trenches with pickaxes in the road all night so no vehicles could get through. This is my friend Pelican riding this tree trunk up in the air, and the police took 4 days trying to figure out how to get him down. To me, this was so important because it brought me back to my roots. I told you, I grew up in the woods of Canada. I was doing this as a kid, a little bit different. And this really brought me back to my principles that I just wanted to create and just to build simply, and that I was doing this because it was something I really deeply believed in. That's why I was living like that. So this whole year was in a lot of ways more challenging than when I was working all of these jobs, working all these startups, because I really had to do the work for myself and there was no rules. And it brought me back to a place where I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to go back to my creation. So age of 25, this was about mastering the art of product. So I worked with this company, Trexo Robotics. We were making exoskeletons for kids with cerebral palsy that would just help them to walk and actuate, and they get this feeling of agency, like, yes, I can do it, I can walk, and it's so exciting, and for me was such a project of light. And finally, I built a product where they're selling this, it's accessible, it's not that expensive, and a ton of kids are starting to get these. It's starting to make real impact. And then also I worked on this project. This is my friend Alex. When he was born, the doctor pulled on his right arm and tore the brachial plexus nerve network. So he has very little muscle, very little control in his right hand. And he needs a wrist brace to keep it straight so he can start to build strength, start to use muscle. And he worked with doctors his whole life, but they were never able to make something that really worked for him. Him and I spent 4 years together building a digital process where ultimately I 3D printed this wrist brace for him. And for 4 years, I probably sent him 20 iterations of this. I would ship them from across the country, ship them from out of country, wherever I was living at the time. He would try them on. We would do a call, and for the first 19, none of them worked. That's how devastating, no? Every time I get on the phone, oh, it doesn't fit. That actually really hurt my hand. That was really painful, and I was losing it. And at the end of 4 years, he put on number 20 and it worked. And now he wears it every day. And for me, that's the point, you know, to go through those iterations and eventually you'll get there. 25 also brought me to Mexico. This is me actually a little bit less than 1 year ago on my first day in Mexico ever. And back then I used to sneak into the HAAB through the back doors and get up to the rooftop. And now I'm the guy working with them to make sure that doesn't happen. So that's great. I know all the back roads. But Mexico gave me so much in the short time that I've been here, and it really brought me a lot of balance. It took me from a point where I was this kid who knew how to kind of build products, and it really brought me into this person who I think now I have such a better understanding of how the world works, how to balance all of these things, and also to balance my life. Like I said before, we often find this distinction between our projects and ourselves, but they're really the same. And now that I've been in Mexico, I've been able to express myself a lot more fully. I've started doing modeling. I did my first acting performance last week. And these things have actually helped me so much just to grow as a person and to inform all of my designs and all of my projects to be deeper. One of the most important things that happened in Mexico for me was that I went on my first Busca de la Visión back in June. And I spent 4 days out in the jungle of the Yucatan alone in a circle this big, 4 days, 4 nights, no food, no water, no talking, just in a meditation. It was one of the most powerful experiences of my life. And from that, I learned that I was afraid. I was so deeply afraid because to me, it was clear what I wanted to do. I've been looking at this problem of prosthetic limbs for 5 years, the problem of access, how there's 60 million people in the world who need a prosthesis and only 3 million have them. And I couldn't understand why no one was working on this, or no one had at least taken a valiant try. And through all these years of trying, I felt like I think I know how to do it. And I had these ideas. And in that vision quest, I realized I was so afraid. I was afraid that I would let my friends and family down. I was afraid that I would find out that I was a failure and I couldn't do what I wanted to do. And I was afraid that this idea was so perfect in my mind. And to bring it into reality, it had a chance to fall. And maybe it wouldn't be what I thought it was. And then who would I be and what would I have? And I sat there in that circle, just waiting for rain, like, please. And I realized that there was nowhere left to run and hide. And I had to pursue my ikigai. And so I came back from that vision quest. Last month I turned 26. And I just officially started my company. It's called Adapt. We make low-cost and personalized prosthetic legs for people in Mexico and Latin America. And this is how it works. So I showed you that picture of me with my friend Alex with the wrist brace. And so this is how I made the most recent version. I just pulled out my iPhone, that's right here. I 3D scanned his arm. And then I take that scan, that mesh file, and I drop it in this program I'm working in. And I'm building this automation. So you take the scan, you just apply a template to it. The design is done. You put it on a 3D printer. This was just in my dad's kitchen. And you take it off the printer and it's done. And I put a ratchet mechanism on the back so we can tighten it, and now he wears it, and now we can wear it every day. Alex also just moved to Mexico, so he's enjoying himself. And so now I'm taking this process that I basically spent 4 years developing with him, and that was always for free. That was pro bono. I actually probably spent $3,000 or $4,000 out of pocket over that time. I never charged him because I just wanted to figure this out with him, and I felt like if we could do it for him, there was going to be more. And so now I'm taking this technology and producing prosthetic legs. But I want to tell you guys something that I feel like nobody talks about. And everyone is out here wanting to change the world and make a big impact. And we're missing something really fundamental. I think it's not going to happen with charities. I think what needs to happen is we need to build for-profit social enterprises. And I'll tell you why. If you build a charity, then every 3 months, you have to search for more funding. And you have to ask someone effectively, can I continue my project? And they're going to tell you yes or no, whether or not they write the check. And like I said, if impact is the depth of the impact times the number of people affected, it's about scalability. How do we get this to more people? To me, this is about building something that's sustainable. This is a slide from my pitch deck. If you want to invest, we can talk after. $13 billion market for people who can currently afford prosthetic limbs. For example, a prosthetic leg, the cheapest one right now is $10,000. With my technology, I can sell with good margin a whole leg for $1,000, a tenth of the cost. Now, that's another $28 billion market for people who couldn't afford the old ones, but could afford mine. $114 billion market. This is for the rest of the people in the world who need prosthetic limbs, but even at $1,000, they can't afford it. We don't have to give up hope on them. I believe there's 3 ways to tap into this. This is where charity comes in, except philanthropy. Overall, this is a for-profit business, but we're able to accept donation to hit this market that otherwise wouldn't get served. 2, we can tap into government contracts. I'm gonna go knock on the president's door next week and sell him 1,000 legs. And number 3 is we can tap into what's going on in Web3. There's really amazing opportunities here. One of the most interesting things going on is called public goods. This is the idea of how do you take and extract money and value from crypto and bring it into the real world. For example, you launch an impact NFT collection, all the funds get extracted and go into funding legs for people. For me, the goal is the whole circle. I want the whole pie. It's not gonna happen through charity. So this is something I really believe in, is figure out how to sustain yourself and your ideas through business models, through entrepreneurship. You don't have to give up your values. You don't have to give up your mission. It's actually just augmenting what you're doing. So in summary, what I believe, what I've learned from my journey, 1, find your ikigai. Find your balance. Even if you don't know what you want in this life, even if you feel lost, you can always be in pursuit of this. And then at least you're in your journey, you're in your flow. Find something that you love, something that you're good at, something that brings service to the world, and something that can pay you, because money is real. 2, do the work for yourself, because everything you create is a reflection of your current state of self. It starts with your nucleus. It starts with your values. It starts with your heart. Build businesses, not charities, so that you can support whatever your vision is. And finally, remember that you have so much agency in this world. We're all so capable of enacting change. Just find your desires and go for it. Thank you.